in the heart of a bustling city, where the neon lights flickered and the air was filled with the hum of endless possibilities, I found myself at a crossroads. It was a Friday night, and the streets were alive with the energy of people seeking adventure and connection. I had just left a friend's party, the echoes of laughter and music still ringing in my ears, when I decided to take a detour through the vibrant streets rather than head straight home. The city was a symphony of sights and sounds, each corner revealing a new scene. Couples strolled hand in hand, groups of friends laughed and joked, and the occasional lone wanderer, like me, soaked in the atmosphere. The cool night breeze brushed against my cheeks, carrying with it the scent of distant rain and the promise of something unexpected. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was different. There was an electric charge in the air, a sense of anticipation that made my heart race. I had always been a believer in fate, in the idea that the universe had a way of bringing people together in the most unexpected ways. And as I turned a corner, I saw him. He was leaning against a lamppost, his silhouette framed by the soft glow of the streetlight. Tall, with dark hair that fell in messy waves, and eyes that seemed to sparkle even from a distance. There was something about him, a magnetic pull that drew me in. Our eyes met, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. I hesitated, feeling a flutter of nerves in my stomach. Should I approach him? Would he even be interested? But before I could overthink it, he pushed off the lamppost and walked towards me, a confident smile playing on his lips. "Hey," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. "You look like you're having a good night." I smiled back, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "I am," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "And it just got a whole lot better." And with that, the night took a turn that would lead to an unforgettable adventure, filled with passion, connection, and the kind of magic that only a chance encounter can bring. As we stood there, the world around us seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the two of us in our own little bubble. The noise of the city became a distant hum, the crowds merely a blur of movement in the periphery of my vision. All I could focus on was him, his eyes, his smile, the way his presence seemed to fill the space between us. "I'm Lucas, by the way," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm and warm, sending a jolt of electricity through me. "Nice to meet you, Lucas," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm Ethan." He grinned, a playful spark in his eyes. "So, Ethan, what brings you out tonight? Besides fate, of course." I laughed, feeling a sense of ease wash over me. "Just needed a break from the usual routine." "You?" Lucas shrugged, his eyes never leaving mine. "Something like that. Sometimes the best nights are the ones you don't plan." We started walking, our shoulders brushing lightly as we navigated the crowded streets. The conversation flowed effortlessly, as if we had known each other for years rather than minutes. Lucas told me about his love for photography, how he saw the world through a lens, capturing moments that others might miss. I shared my own passions, my dreams of writing a novel, the characters and stories that kept me up at night. As we talked, we found ourselves in front of a small, cozy bar tucked away in a quiet alley. The soft glow of the neon sign cast a warm light on the cobblestone path, inviting us in. Without a word, we both knew we wanted to continue our conversation inside. The bar was dimly lit, the air filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. We found a booth in the corner, the leather seats worn and comfortable. A candle flickered on the table, casting a romantic glow over everything. "So, Ethan," Lucas said, leaning in slightly, his eyes reflecting the candlelight, "tell me more about yourself. What makes you tick?" I took a deep breath, feeling a flutter of excitement in my chest. "Well, I've always been a dreamer," I began, my voice soft. "I believe in the power of stories to change lives, to connect people. And I guess I'm always looking for that next great adventure, that next chapter in my own story." Lucas smiled, his eyes never leaving mine. "I think you might have found it tonight." As the night wore on, our conversation deepened, our connection growing stronger with each passing moment. The bar around us faded into the background, leaving only the two of us, lost in our own world. And as the hours ticked by, I knew that this night was far from over, that the best was yet to come. As the night deepened, so did our connection. The bar had filled up, the hum of conversation and laughter wrapping around us like a warm blanket. But even in the crowded space, it felt like we were the only two people in the room. Lucas's eyes held a spark that seemed to ignite something within me, a feeling of excitement and anticipation that I hadn't experienced in a long time. We ordered another round of drinks, the clinking of glasses punctuating our conversation. Lucas told me about his travels, the places he had seen, and the people he had met. His stories were filled with adventure and wonder, each one more captivating than the last. I listened, enthralled, feeling like I was living vicariously through his experiences. "You know," he said, his voice low and intimate, "I've always believed that the best stories are the ones that happen by chance, the ones that you can't plan or predict." I nodded, feeling a flutter in my chest. "Like tonight," I murmured. He smiled, a slow, sexy smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Exactly like tonight." As the hours passed, the bar began to empty, the crowds thinning out as the night wore on. But we remained, lost in our own world, our conversation flowing as effortlessly as the drinks. The candle on our table flickered, casting long shadows on the walls, creating an intimate atmosphere that made everything feel dreamlike and surreal. Eventually, the bartender called out last orders, and we realized that the night was coming to an end, at least this part of it. Lucas looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of desire and uncertainty. "Ethan," he began, his voice hesitant, "I don't want this night to end. Do you?" I shook my head, feeling a surge of excitement. "No, I don't." He reached out, his hand covering mine on the table. His touch was warm and reassuring, sending a jolt of electricity through me. "Come home with me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's see where this night takes us." I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and the promise of something magical. And in that moment, I made my decision. I nodded, a smile spreading across my face. "Let's go." As we left the bar, the cool night air hit us, a stark contrast to the warmth of the bar. But the chill didn't dampen the heat between us. We walked close together, our shoulders brushing, our hands entwined. The city lights twinkled above us like stars, guiding us on our path. And I couldn't help but feel like this was the start of something truly extraordinary. Little did I know that the night would take a turn that would leave me breathless and forever changed. The walk to Lucas's apartment was a blur of anticipation and excitement. The city streets, once familiar, now felt like uncharted territory, each step taking us closer to the unknown. The air was charged with electricity, every touch and glance amplifying the tension between us. His apartment was nestled in a quiet, tree-lined street, a stark contrast to the bustling energy of the city center. As we climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, my heart pounded in my chest. The dimly lit hallway felt intimate, the silence broken only by the soft echo of our footsteps. Lucas unlocked the door, and we stepped inside, the world outside fading away as the door clicked shut behind us. His apartment was cozy and inviting, filled with the warmth of personal touches. Photographs adorned the walls, each one a snapshot of a moment captured in time. A guitar leaned against the corner, looking well-loved and often played. The room was bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, casting long shadows that danced across the floor. Lucas turned to me, his eyes dark with desire. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low and husky. I nodded, my heart racing. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. And with that, we fell into each other's arms, the world outside fading away as we lost ourselves in the heat of the moment. The night was young, and the possibilities were endless. Every touch, every kiss felt like a promise, a silent vow that this night would be unforgettable. As the hours passed, we explored each other's bodies, our desires intertwining in a dance of passion and connection. The room was filled with the soft sounds of our breaths, the rustle of sheets, and the whispered words of endearment. It was a night of discovery, of intimacy, and of a bond that felt deeper than anything I had ever experienced. In the quiet moments between our passionate encounters, we talked, our conversations flowing as effortlessly as our touches. Lucas shared his dreams, his fears, and his hopes for the future. I opened up about my own aspirations, the stories that kept me up at night, and the characters that felt more real than the people I passed on the street. There was an ease between us, a comfort that made it feel like we had known each other for years rather than hours. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, I felt a sense of contentment, a peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. But little did I know that the dawn would bring a twist that would shatter the magical spell of our encounter, leaving me with a bitter taste of reality. As the first rays of sunlight began to peek through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room, I stirred from the comfort of Lucas's arms. The night had been a whirlwind of passion and connection, a dance of desires that had left me feeling both exhilarated and exhausted. I looked over at Lucas, his face peaceful in sleep, and felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name, a mix of contentment and uncertainty. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and made my way to the kitchen. The apartment was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of the city waking up. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, my mind racing with thoughts of the night before. It had been magical, a chance encounter that had turned into something truly special. But as the morning light filtered in, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Just as I was about to return to the bedroom, I noticed a framed photograph on the bookshelf. It was a picture of Lucas with another man, their arms wrapped around each other, smiles wide and genuine. My heart sank as I realized that the man in the photo was not just a friend. He was someone important to Lucas. I picked up the frame, my hands trembling slightly as I studied the image. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Lucas standing in the doorway, his expression a mix of surprise and guilt. "Ethan," he began, his voice hesitant. "I can explain." I set the frame back on the shelf, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, his eyes filled with regret. "His name is Jake. He's my boyfriend." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, my stomach churning with a mix of shock and betrayal. "Boyfriend," I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. But you kissed me. You brought me here. You made me believe." "I know," he interrupted, his voice pleading. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never meant for this to happen. I got caught up in the moment, in the magic of the night. I forgot about everything else." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "How could you forget something like that?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "How could you do this to me?" To him, Lucas reached out to touch my arm, but I flinched away, unable to bear the thought of his touch. "I'm so sorry," he repeated, his voice filled with desperation. "I never wanted to hurt you, or Jake. I just lost control." I shook my head, feeling a surge of anger. "That's not an excuse," I snapped. "You played with my feelings, with my trust. You made me believe in something that was never real." He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I know," he murmured, "and I'll never forgive myself for that." I turned to leave, my heart heavy with betrayal and heartache. As I reached the door, Lucas called out to me, his voice filled with desperation. "Ethan, please, can we talk about this?" But I didn't look back. Couldn't. The magic was gone, replaced by a cold, hard truth that left me feeling empty and alone. I walked out of the apartment, the door clicking shut behind me with a finality that echoed through my heart. As I stepped out into the morning light, the city felt different, colder, less inviting. The night that had started with such promise had ended in heartache, a cruel reminder of the fleeting nature of love and the pain of betrayal. But even in the midst of my heartache, I knew that I would heal, that I would move on, and that I would find love again, real love, built on honesty and trust. And until then, I would share my story, hoping that others could learn from my mistakes and find their own path to happiness. So, if you're reading this, remember to subscribe to True Gay Stories for more tales of love, heartache, and everything in between. Because in the end, every story has a lesson, and every heartache has a purpose. And who knows, maybe your story is just beginning.